You are muted, Samrat.
Good morning and welcome. Just a minute, sir. Good morning and welcome to all in today's webinar, Alternative Narrative Making Discourses in Language and Education. Our history and literature mainly describes the events of mainstream society. So many stories which belong to this important genre remain unnoticed. Alternative narrative set its focus on those narratives that provide different stories of different power structure. I hope from this webinar you will be able to learn many new aspects from the above mentioned topic. Now, I request our beloved Maharaj, who is the principal of our college, to um, to say something about this or to give his welcome address in this ceremony.
ॐ मधुवातारितायते मधुक्षरन्ति सिन्धवः माध्वीर्न सन्तोषधीः मधुनक्तम् उतोषसी मधुमत्पार्थिवगुं रजः मधुद्यौरस्तु नः पिता मधुमान्नो वनस्पतिर्मधुमाम् अस्तु सूर्यः माद्भिर्गावो भवन्तु नः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ। Welcome to Ramakrishna Mission, Brahmananda College of Education. My devoted pranams to the Holy Trio, Sister Thakur, Ma and Swamiji, and my sincere gratitude to all the dignitaries present over here. Today, we are going to focus on the topic alternative narrative, making discourses on language and education through a national level webinar, which is very much relevant to chalk out the present discourse. With immense pleasure, we inform you that today three eminent professors are there to discuss their valuable ideas regarding the topic of this webinar. I cordially convey regards and my respect to the respected Professor Santosh Mahapatra, Assistant Professor, BITS Pilani, Hyderabad Campus, Telangana, the respected Professor Bornini Lahiri from IIT Kharagpur, and the respected Professor Mangai J. Wilson, the Dean of Academic Affairs and Head of the Department of English, to deliver their valuable speeches in this webinar. I sincerely thank to our beloved Professor Somrat Bisai and Professor Sanjay Mitro for their sincere effort to conduct the seminar. I sincerely thank to all the professors and members of our college who have positively supported with their valuable views and thoughts regarding the webinar. I hope you will enjoy the session and you will excavate new ideas in the field of language and education. Thanking all of you, I conclude.
Uh, Thank you, Maharaj, our beloved principal, for his valuable speech. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Santosh Mahapatra. But before his speech, I would like to introduce him. Professor Mahapatra has completed his PhD in English language teaching from the Department of English, Hyderabad Central University. Before joining BITS Filani as an assistant professor, he worked as a teaching assistant in English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. He is in the peer review committee of many Scopus Index journals of international report such as RELC Journal, Asia Pacific Researcher, Research in Learning and Technology, Fortel, etc. His current areas of interest includes online ESL teacher development, multilingualism, etc. Sir, now the platform is yours, and I will request all the participants kindly to mute their phone so that we can listen to him properly. And I will request MK Nag sir not to present anything and not to do experiment during his speech. MK Nag sir, are you listening? Dr. MK Nag sir. Okay, sir, please continue.
Sir, I am present here.
But sir, kindly stop your presenting.
Sir, there is some technical problem, I think.
Sir, I think then you should quit and once again join, just simply join.
I am
Okay.
joining.
All of you will cooperate during his presentation, and I hope he is an excellent speaker, so it's better to listen to him very carefully.
Okay,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Samrat, for inviting me, and thank you, mm, Ramakrishna Mission, Brahmanand College of Education, for inviting me, the authorities, and I'm happy to have you all here, and I'm happy that you are here, and I'm happy that we are talking about home languages today. In my session, I'll be talking about utilizing home languages of learners in the classroom to promote learning. This will not be a research presentation as such, because in this presentation, I'm trying to talk about something which has been there, but after you know the NEP 2020 it came out, then we started discussing explicitly or openly about home languages and using home languages in the classroom. Earlier, we had the concept of multilingualism. We were talking about it, but considering it as a serious option to something that can be used in the classroom came only after NEP 2020 talked about it openly. Then we started discussing how we can use home languages in the classroom. Before that, it was all it was there, but not really in an organized fashion, and it was not government initiative as such, or it was not from the central government. It was not a mandate as such, but it has become a mandate almost. And soon we will have more information about this very soon. Just give me 1 second. I'll move to the next one. Just give me. Okay. So this is something my thoughts are built on. This session is built on this belief that when we are talking about language, we are not really talking about a language as such. We are trying to talk about the human being or the person that is involved. So here, when we talk about a classroom situation, we are talking about learners. We are not really talking about different languages and understanding of different languages. We are talking about who the person is and dealing with a person, and that's very important. In this session, so I have a plan here. First, we'll talk about what we mean by home language, and then we'll talk about why home language is in the classroom, how they are beneficial. And then next one is how we use learners' home languages in the classroom. What kind of strategies we can follow for using home languages in the classroom. And then, because all of you, I don't know how much you are aware of this, but once you start using, I would like you to take the research the same thing. Well, let's say you start using home languages in the classroom and you promote use of home language in the classroom. You also, in the process, I would like you to explore your own classroom, see if the use of home languages is benefiting your students and their achievement in whatever you are teaching. If that is beneficial, what do? You document it and try to publish it in some places. I think that should be the something that you should be looking for or should try to do. Otherwise, why would you do something without any benefit? You know that it may benefit your learners, but if you keep a record of it and you try to publish what you have done, if you maintain a record and come together, if not alone, you can come together as a group and try to publish something. It will be beneficial. This is what we'll be doing in the last section of this presentation. Okay. Now, when we talk about home languages, can you write in the chat box if you have what you mean by home language? If I say home language, what is it that is coming to your mind? Can you write in the chat box? I'll be looking at the chat box. Your definition of a home language. Mother tongue, okay. Any other definition? Can you write in the chat box? Language, conversation at home, in which I taught. Okay. That we spoken at home, yes. Mother tongue. Medium of communication, where? Talk to each other. Who are those each others? Anybody else? Any other definition? Okay, so you can add to the list, like the language you use at home, the language you use to talk to your siblings, your parents, your relatives at home, or your parents' language, or the language you learned in the home environment in your childhood days, or the language that is used by your family members, or the language you are exposed to immediately after your birth, or could be your home language, could be the language you are exposed to within the community where you are brought up. Probably that is also home language. Or so anything that is used at home can be called home language. The language you use at home for daily conversations, yes. So that if that is home language, then we'll go to my next question, which is this. Can you tell me, write in again in the chat box, how it's different from mother tongue or school language or regional language or state language? Similar or different? Similar to or different from? Can you write which ones are similar and which ones are not so similar? Could be different. Can you write in the chat box? Okay, all are same. Informal language, school language is formal. Okay, Devapriya is saying that these are informal relations. Okay. Anybody else? Any other notion of a mother tongue, of a school language, or how it's similar to or different from your home language? Okay, sometimes the language you use at home may not be similar to what you use in the school premises. Yeah, possible. Different dialects, community languages, regional languages could be different. Yes, very much possible. Home language informal, absolutely. So there might be a lot of differences. So apart from being formal or informal, also there might be differences in terms of how they're used and the situations in which they're used. You talked about dialects; they're also applicable. So there might be some similarity between the home language and the mother tongue, or the same. Maybe they're same most of the time. Sometimes home language and school language could be same, could be different. But school language, as you rightly pointed out, could be a little more formal. Regional language could be same, could be different. State language could be same, could be different. Depends. So, but this is what the realization should be on the part of all the teachers, that we as teachers, because we are teachers, we understand that we need to understand that these languages could be same, could be different. If they're different, that should be respected. There is nothing to feel bad or good about. I mean, bad about it, or looking down upon somebody because somebody is using certain kind of language. May not be very human. So a human approach to using language could be having the same kind of, giving the same kind of value or respect, or looking at people without any bias because of the kind of language they're using, or the kind of intonation or pronunciation, or the kind of vocabulary they're using. That should not determine how you connect with a person as such. That's something that is very basic. I'm sure all of you, because you are teachers or you are researchers, you understand how that works. And there is, a fair kind of we have a lot of arguments that will support this cause. Let's go to the next point. I'll give you a quick survey. I would like you to respond to the survey. And here it goes. Can you go to menti.com and use the code 75140248? We'll type this, menti.com. That's the site. And the code is, I will try to share the link. Chat box. 75140248.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am from Nirmal, sir, from Vinayaga Mission University, MA English first year.
Okay.
So, sir, can I join you, sir, this group meeting?
You're already there. We'll talk about that. Right now, try to respond to the question. Which of these is your HL? Let's say you are not from any of these. It's fine. I'm just assuming that a lot of Bengali speakers are there, so there might be a lot of varieties. That's it.
Yes, sir.
So we have a lot of Kolkata variety here.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nirmal, you have to mute right now because we are focusing on this. After this, we'll have a conversation. I'll give you some time at the end of the presentation. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of people with Kolkata variety. Yes, I understand. Okay, then we have one Nadia variety of Bengali, one Rari. Sylheti, we don't have anybody. Kontai, we don't have anybody. Varendri, Rangpurian, maybe others are there. Okay, so we have people using different varieties, and that is absolutely, the point is that is perfectly acceptable. My next question will be a follow-up of this one. You stay on that. I'll give you the next question. How many home languages do you have to deal with in your classroom? I'm talking about how many speakers from different home languages. How many communities of speakers, linguistic communities, do you have to deal with in your classroom? Wow, more than three? Three, okay. This is interesting. See, we have so many home languages in your classroom. This is very exciting. Okay, Mr. Appan Ghosh is saying three. Okay, we have more than three in a lot of cases. That's really, really exciting and very encouraging. Wherever you are, let's say you are in Tamil Nadu or in Orissa or in Maharashtra or in Punjab, wherever you are, you might have many home languages, home language users in the classroom, different home languages in the classroom, or speakers using different home languages in the classroom. So, more than three is it seems it's normal. So if that is normal, that multilingualism is normal, and use of multiple languages in the classroom should be normal for you, then it should not be something really surprising, something that you have not done, not used. Maybe people have to have more ideas about multilingualism. There are a lot of arguments that home languages are not used in the classroom. Right now, I will not. Now, from today onwards, I will not agree with this. So many people have so many languages, and you are dealing with them in the classroom. Okay, let's go to the next part of our presentation. So you saw that there are, you are dealing with several home languages in the classroom, and if I have to ask you very briefly, tell me how you use the home languages of your classroom in the chat box. For what purposes, you use home languages of your learners or of your students. Can you write in the chat box quickly? To generate more discussion. Very good. For any other reason, to build rapport? Yeah, makes sense. Anything else? To integrate? More engagement? Anything else? For any other purpose? Can you point out active participation? Okay, very good. Facilitate learning in what way? Surya, can you tell us in what way there? Encourage collaboration? Very good. Any other? Engage students, better concept understanding, good one. Integrate skills, nice. Better discussion, okay. So understand, okay, to enable students to understand the concept you are teaching in the classroom. Could be from any discipline, could be doing any subject, let's say science, geography, history, social science, could be anything, could be languages, could be mathematics, could be anything. Irrespective of the subject you are teaching or the skills you are teaching or the language you are teaching, many languages, the more the languages, better the understanding, better the collaboration in the classroom. So perfect, yeah. Interpersonal skills, views express, okay, perfect, yeah. Very good, you are on track. I'm happy. Let's go to the next section. Why use home languages? You have you have given me answers. I'm just going to repeat some of these, may add a few more things. I'm taken things from research as such. These are established things, what I'm going to talk about right now. So the first one, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, if you let students use their home languages in the classroom, it will help them understand the concepts better. Anything that you talk, you think about it for a minute. You will realize that when I'm talking to you in English and talking about a, let's say, powerful concept or a concept that is considered to be difficult, and I'm speaking in English, it becomes a little more difficult than when you are using, let's say, if you are using Kolkata variety or Bengali, and I'm using the same Bengali language, then your understanding will be better because I'm using your own language. So you can understand this much better. But this may not be the case when you are using English. It can be slightly more challenging because there might be words and phrases which will be slightly difficult to decode and understand the concept. So it will help students understand better, definitely. And the performance will be, because they are able to understand better, performance will be slightly better than what they were doing with English. If they're not very comfortable with English, performance could be much, much better. The second thing is, which is related to this, you have already told me this thing, that there will be more involvement, because if you are allowing them to use their mother tongue or their home language, then they'll be excited about what you're doing. They'll be able to talk, because it's not compulsory to use another language. Let's say, for example, English. They may not have to use English all the time. They can use a little bit of their own language, maybe move to English in between. So you encourage that. If English is the target language for them, then maybe they need to move to English a little bit here and there, but you keep encouraging them. Mother tongue use doesn't mean that if the target language is English, they keep using mother tongue. It should be judicious in the sense that they should be able to use, they should be encouraged to use English, but if they need the help of their mother tongue or their home language, they should be allowed to use their home language. Okay. And then more engagement, because they'll be talk to each other really well, because they can always fall back on their own language, and you are not punishing them for using their own language. So please encourage them to use their own language, but at the same time encourage them also to learn the target language. It should be both. And sometimes some people argue that if they keep using their mother tongue, will they have problems when it comes to using English? I don't think so. I don't think there will be a problem. There may not be any problem at all when it comes to using English. Let's go to the next one. Somebody is giving me a compliment, so we'll talk about that part a little later. Better cultural exchange, acceptance of heterogeneity. By that, I mean, when you bring a home language to the classroom, you are also bringing their culture to the classroom. For example, if I start speaking in Odia, I will bring my own culture to this discussion, because this is a platform where I'll be addressing audience from different places, and we have a very short period of interaction. I may not be able to use much of Odia in my interaction right now. But if you ask me, I learned a little bit of Odia, a little bit of Bhojpuri in the beginning, probably a little bit. But then I moved to English. Right now I'm using English because I have I have 35 minutes or 40 minutes I'm targeting to finish my talk. So I will be using, most of the time I'll be using English, may not be using Odia as such. But if you're in a classroom situation where there are a lot of languages, I will encourage people to use their language, I mean learners' own language, home language, which will lead to more exchange. Cultural exchange means you will also bring in what is happening of the festivals, ceremonies, things that you do at home, rituals, and a lot of things you can talk about in your own language. And in the process, other learners will also start accepting other cultures and be familiar with other cultures, which will spread heterogeneity, which is a good thing. It will reduce all kinds of tension that arises due to this problem with heterogeneity. People are not really exposed to other cultures, but if you allow people to use home languages, there'll be some exposure to their culture, which will ensure heterogeneity, which is a good thing for harmonious living in the society. So let's encourage people to use home languages. The next point is reduction of bias, which has to do with if you are allowing people language mediums of cultural exchanges. Language and culture are intricately related. You have all languages generally carry the stamp of certain cultures, or all cultures carry some linguistic things, let's say linguistic aspects of certain languages. So, and generally, anytime you talk about language, they bear the stamp of culture. So when we talk about English language, we are also talking about a lot of things that are British in nature. So yeah, languages are mediums of cultural exchanges, could be mediums. And if you encourage, they will be really healthy also. That will promote linguistic heterogeneity, also cultural heterogeneity. And then the next one I was talking about is reduction of bias. Because if you are promoting heterogeneity, there will be more space for discussion, there will be more space for exchange, which will reduce the bias among speakers in terms of their attitude towards other languages, and also in terms of how they think about other cultures, not only languages but also culture. So it will bring cultural and linguistic heterogeneity to the classroom, which will make school a very safe place, a place where learners can express their identities. They can talk about themselves, they can be themselves, and they have nothing to worry, and they don't have to acquire the identity of some other culture or some other language as such. Like they're free to do so, but I'm saying that nobody is pushing them directly or indirectly to do that, because in a class, but your role is very important there. If you are a teacher, your role is very important there, because you are the one who can ensure in the classroom that all languages are on the same plane. No language is better than any other language, or no variety is better than any other variety. That's something that you can ensure. Because at a policy level, there might be a certain language which is more acceptable than the other, and there might be, but in NEP 2020, we are talking about different languages. That's why we are trying in some way at a policy level to make sure that all languages are on the same plane, and no language is better or more powerful than any other language as such. So let's accept this fact and encourage this fact. But before you encourage, this is something that you have to convince yourself, that there is no better variety of a language than, as such. Like this is the better variety than other varieties. This is something that we should think about very carefully. There is a question. I'll try to read that and come to you. Yeah, this is a challenge. I don't disagree with that. That there is a challenge for the teacher. If you are not able to understand other varieties, there might be a few varieties which you are not able to understand. But there is always scope for, if you expect learners to understand 3 languages or 4 languages because it's prescribed in the syllabus, and have space for each other, have respect for each other. Teacher can do the same thing. You can enable learners to use their languages, exchange the meanings, exchange meanings of different concepts among each other, and talk to each other and bring their own languages in the classroom. You can be a part of that discussion, part of that exchange. You may not have to be a master of one language to be able to guess the meanings. You can talk to them, and that will also encourage interaction between the teacher and the learner. There is a possibility that you can explore. See how it works, and then we will do that. We have some literature right now, how multiple languages can be used in the classroom. If you are interested in how things are used, you can contact me. I can direct you to the literature that is available, established research that is available on how multiple languages are used. We'll talk about that a little later. I'll talk about where we can do this. Biplav Burman has asked a question: which comes first, language or culture? That's a philosophical question. I'll not get into that right now. I'll get deviated from what I'm talking about right now. So let's focus on this. I'll come back to Mr. Burman, to your question. Next one is positive impact on the self-esteem of learners, which has to do with if you allow them to use their language freely in the classroom, and they're able to talk to each other in their own language, and they see that the teacher values their language. Okay, teacher does not look down upon one language or does not prefer one language over other languages. If teacher is doing that, that will encourage the student to think about things or make use of home language in the classroom, which will have a positive impact on their self-esteem. In the sense, they will feel confident about their language, they will be proud of their own language, their culture, and that will help them grow as learners. That will help them understand things better, and will have a good sense of their own. And this is something that you should be thinking about when you are encouraging them to use their own language in the classroom. The positive impact on their self-esteem, on their identity, of who they are, and it's okay to be who they are. They don't have to change their language use, their accent, their vocabulary as such, because they belong to certain community or certain linguistic community. Yes, absolutely. Priya, it's a very good point. They will also have a feeling of security about their language and culture. Absolutely, yes. That will make the classroom a very nice democratic space, which all teachers should aim to create in the classroom. It will create, yes, Dr. Nath, you are right. It will create a homely environment. Learners can learn things easily. Absolutely, you are right. Absolutely right. Can't agree more. One more point is easy to transfer learning. If they are able to do things in one language, you should always think that if they're able to do it well in their own language, they should be able to do it in English really well, or in another language and really, really well. So transfer across languages is really, really, it's very possible, and it's kind of well established in research literature that if you are able to do things in one language really, really well, then there is a possibility that you will be able to do a lot in do well in other languages. There is one more comment I'm kind of tempted to read, is preservation of languages. We are talking about preserving languages, and multilingual. One of the important reasons behind multilingual education policy is to ensure that all languages are preserved, all cultures are preserved, and there is a heterogeneity, and there is acceptance of heterogeneity in the society. And this is very important right now. So we are talking about transfer of skills. So you can transfer certain skills. If you are able to write really well, read really well, or speak really well in one language, there is a possibility that you can transfer the skills to another language. Skill transfer is kind of established in research literature. But as teachers, you know that you have a lot of challenges. Can you talk about a few challenges here? Or any other benefit and challenges? Both are welcome. Can you talk about some of the challenges? One challenge earlier somebody talked about is how does a teacher handle so many languages? I totally understand the problem that might arise in the classroom when we let students use their own language, their home language. And understanding different languages can be a problem, and for the teacher it can be a real challenge, and the teacher might need some training, hands-on training, how to use multiple languages, how to let learners use multiple languages in the classroom in a judicious manner and in a productive manner. Judicious because if you have another target language, let's say this is an English classroom and you want the learners to learn English, let's say reading, writing, listening, speaking, grammar, vocabulary and all, you are letting them use other languages. So you need to make sure that these languages are helping them learn English really, really well. How do you do that? You need some guidance, some training in that, so that you are utilizing their home languages rather than directly teaching their home languages as such. Then one more thing could be judiciously and productively, in the sense you need to have a target, what you want to achieve by letting students or by encouraging students to use their mother tongues whenever there is a necessity. Why it should be productive in what sense? In the sense that if your target skill, let's say in English, they should be able to write well, then maybe the discussions that precede a writing session, let's say it's a writing classroom, and you want them to write a paragraph on their family. Okay, if they have to do that, then you need to make sure that the discussion that is happening in the classroom to gather ideas about what they should write about their family, the discussion can be in their home language. So they talk, they come together, create a mind map, and they can use their own home language to talk about what should be included in the paragraph, which should come first, what should come second. And then when they write in English, whatever is possible they do. And if they are struggling in English, you can help them and all. So you make sure that when you are asking them to, not be afraid of using their own language, you should ensure that it's productive, it's taking them somewhere, and you have a target in mind, very clear target in mind. The target should not be just to ensure that they are doing things in their own language and there is no output or outcome of the use in the classroom. So can you talk about some of the challenges, other challenges other than that one I discussed? Our language pathways of post explorations or the creation of counter narratives. You need to simplify that for our teacher. Can you do that, Mr. Joseph? In the chat box. Any other challenge anybody else thinking about? Doesn't too much use of home language detail the process of developing communication skills in the learning in the English class? That's a very good question, Dr. Ray. Let me address that question. So, use of your home language, much use, how much is much, how much is adequate is something that you can take a call in the classroom. As a teacher, you understand how much is appropriate. You let them use their mother tongue when they are not able to do something in English immediately, and they are, they are just quiet or they are not participating. In that case, you can encourage them to use a bit of home language in the classroom. But when they are able to participate, they are able to do things in English, you can ask them to slowly switch from their home language to English a little more, and you make sure there is a direction to it. That means what they should be able to do at the end of this should be clear in the beginning. What you are able to, want them to achieve in the beginning, in the end, you should be clear about this. Then it will be productive. And how much is adequate, how much is judicious is something that you need to take a call. I cannot tell this much is adequate. Sitting here in Hyderabad in Betspirani campus, I cannot decide what is appropriate. Some English medium schools are very cynical, yes, and they take punitive measures against students who use their home language, which is a sad thing and stupid. I will call them even idiotic in some way and not really acceptable. But let's try and change that scenario. And I'm sure some of you might have connections with teachers in English medium schools. You can talk about this thing to them, that we have established research which suggests that changing to home language use can benefit. Okay, let's move to the next slide, the next section. So how do we use learners' home languages in the classroom? In terms of, I'm thinking about in 3 ways, okay? One, in terms of materials you can do. One, in terms of assessment. One, in terms of, sorry. One in terms of classroom discussions and instruction. So I have made a list of things that we can do. Let's go to the list. First, when we're talking about materials, you can create instructional rubrics where you can write, you can let learners write their achievement targets. Let's say you are teaching them speaking, or you are teaching them writing, or you're teaching them reading. Make them create rubrics in their own language, in their home language, and let them write what they want to achieve in this. Let's say, I am able to do this, so that if they are able to say in, let's say in Odia, mu a class sesare, this is Ami, this class sesare, I'll be able to do this. Okay, something like that. If you are able to say that and write in the form of rubrics, you have to train them, you have to help them with this, but if they create rubrics or individual rubrics, that is achievement. So what they should do is, you can ask them to create rubrics in the classroom, write performance targets for, let's say, for the next week, for the month, something like that. So you create rubrics for them, what they are able to do in paragraph writing, what they are able to do in making presentations, what they are able to do in terms of reading a piece of text and understanding the main idea, something like that. So you let them create rubrics in their home language, something that you can use for in classroom materials part. Text, sometimes you have English text, you can make them create text in their home languages so that they can demonstrate that they understand a piece of text in English. And later you can move from entirely from mother tongue use to home language use to bit of home language use and English together. So recreation of a text in their home language could be something that you can think about. We will have multilingual text soon, so even better. Next one could be activities, where I'm thinking about creating activities which will require them to use a little bit of mother tongue. For example, if it's a speaking task, you can say that you have to use English wherever you are not able to move or make progress. You can switch to your home language, and that is acceptable. If you do that, then probably that'll be a good space to use home language. Then in projects, in terms of assessments, if you can give them projects, group projects, then use of home language will be appropriate in that case. They can talk about things, they can bring stuff from their home language and write in their home language and present to the class. That is a possibility. With English, along with English, if it's an English classroom, if it's a science classroom, also English and other things, or Bengali and their home language, whichever it is. Combination of languages is open. I'm not saying it will be only English or only Bengali. Could be any other language, could be Tamil or English, could be Tamil and something else. Question papers, you can write in the question papers, the instructions can be in their home language. You can take their help and create multiple papers in the same paper in different home languages. That will be fun also, creating multiple question papers. And at the same time, you will be also, discussing a lot of question papers because you are talking about home language. You can take them interviews. If it's a formative assessment, you can make the formative assessment interview based, where they can use you can ask the questions in their home language, or they can respond with English and their home language. There is a possibility if they're struggling in English or struggling with a concept. If you're teaching science, let's say that the concepts can be in their home language a little bit. So tolerance of that will help the students grow. Presentations can be a mixture of 2 languages, 3 languages. As much as you can tolerate and your students can understand, you can understand wherever. So that thing about how much is adequate, once again, is up to the teacher, where you think it is appropriate and it's not unfair. You have to balance this between what is fair and what is unfair. And then summaries also can be one form of assessment. You talk about something and they summarize and tell you what we did in the class. And that can be a part of your formative assessment. That can be done in the home language. Can be in any classroom, any subject classroom, English, any other language, any other subject classroom. In terms of the methods of teaching, the group discussions or group work or pair work, any discussion happening in the classroom can be in the form of home language. There is a lot of scope for using home language, switching from home language to English, English to home language. Question answers can be, you can ask questions in one language, they can respond in another. Switch between 2 languages should be acceptable. Instructions can be one more way of doing it also. Okay. So I'm talking about only a few things. You can explore more because you are teachers, you are dealing with students, you know your students better than I do. So you go back to your classroom, explore more ideas, see how it works, where it is working, where it's not working. As a group, you come together. This is what I'm talking about in the next one. In a group, you come together, have a discussion, how to take this forward. How do we use home language? How do we value languages in the classroom? How do we make use of or exploit students' home languages in the classroom? Then make a small plan. How do we do that? Consult somebody who knows home language use well. In this case, you can always write to me and ask me if this is a way we can use our home language, or talk to somebody who is there around about that place, who understands multilingualism well. And then get some feedback from the person, see how you can fine tune that plan, and then go for execution, go to the classroom. But when you are doing it, make sure you write a diary, maintain a diary. All of you maintain a diary, and then prepare a report. Try to publish it in a journal. Like, for example, you have Fortel, you have language and language teaching. A lot of national journals are there. You have LTI, you have a lot of journals, national journals are there. Send that paper that we used we used home languages of students in the classroom for discussion purposes or question answer purposes, and this is how it benefited students, this is how it benefited their learning. Talk about it. Okay, write about it. Come together, 3 or 4 people, do it, write about it, create a small paper, send it out to one of these journals, get it published, so that more people know about how you are doing, and keep track of others also, how they are doing. So we grow, you grow, students grow, learning grows in the classroom. This is what we should be targeting. This is what we should be doing in the classroom. I didn't want to talk about make it a research based. That's why I kept it simple and kept it like that. Otherwise, I could have got into research and talked about research papers and all, which would not have been really beneficial, I thought. So do this and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then go back to again discussion, have a see. So that's why I say that it should be a cyclic process. You go back and do the same thing and keep doing it. This is something that you can join. There is a group on Facebook called ELTI India. You can join. There are around 5,000 members in that group. I'm sharing my profile. If you want to write to me, you can write to me on this. Just give me a second. I will share this presentation with you, and you can click on that link. You will find my address there. Yeah, this is a link to the presentation that I have shared with you just now. And right now I'm open to some questions. That's why I finished 3 minutes early. If you have any questions, I would love to respond to some. You can download and keep a presentation, the slides, and join that Facebook group. And you can mail me, because I have given my profile, my ID there, my email ID is there on that profile. So you can always mail me if you want. If you have any queries, questions regarding multilingualism or use of home languages, you can always contact me.
Thank you, sir, for your enriching speech. And I can take 2 or 3 questions if sir allow.
Yes, please.
So please type your question here rather than asking. I think it will be good, right? Anyone?
I think they will take a minute to type if they're typing. Yeah.
Okay, you can, one of you can ask your question by using mic. Just unmute yourself and ask question. Acha, already there is a question. Which method would you? Sir, there is a question like which method would you recommend for judicious use of English class?
Yeah, I'm responding to that. I'm saying that the judicious use should be decided by the teacher. You are in a position to decide what is judicious in your context. So, fostering and promoting, okay, we'll come from judicious use to that. So I'm saying that when we're talking about judicious use of language in the classroom, we are thinking about something that will lead to something productive. Okay, the kind of language use that will lead to something productive. In the sense, if you are teaching them writing or listening or reading or writing, whatever you are teaching, your judicious use should ensure that that skill that you are targeting is learned better and that is learned more effectively. And learners are making more progress, faster progress in the direction, in the target direction. So this is something that will help you decide what is judicious. You see that if they're using a lot of mother tongue, home language in the classroom, they're not moving to English, you are teaching them speaking, then maybe you need to rethink about your judicious use, maybe go back and say that, no, you need to start using a little bit of English. It should not be only home language all the time. Use a little more of English. So that will be judicious. Somewhere, if you think that they need to learn a little more of this, a little more of that, you check and balance thing that you need to find out. Okay, you need to decide. Grammar translation is problematic because translation becomes mandatory there, and grammatical structures become mandatory there. And this is not what we are aiming at right now. We are thinking about where you use their home language as a backup plan, not really something that they must translate and tell you. That's not the target. The target, you decide what is the target. If the target is to teach them writing in English, it's not really healthy to let them write only in their home language all the time and not really think about English or translate all the time. That becomes slight, but I'm saying that translation has its value. I'm not saying that, I'm not ignoring translation as such as a method of teaching. It should be there. A little bit of translation it's okay, it's perfect. I mean, sometimes it works really, really well. But these calls, how much translation, how much of mother tongue use, how to use, when to use, is something that call has to be taken by you. And depending on the kind of students you have in the classroom, that should determine how you should use. Is the language have the main parameter for cultural transformation? Main or not, I don't know whether that's the main, but definitely it will contribute to some kind of cultural transformation in some way, or cultural harmony in many ways. In a situation where communicating in English is a mandatory thing, how do you deal with that? That can be tricky, but that's something that we all have to deal with and have to educate people around us. Maybe the person who is the head of that department in that place, in that school, they may not be aware of these possibilities. You need to go back from here, maybe educate those people there in those schools, talk to them. You may have friends in English medium schools who are principals of those schools. Teach them, tell them, educate them, enlighten them, tell them the benefits, show them evidence from research, show them that this can be done in this way. Probably they will learn and grow. We don't know, but there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Could they be used synonymously? Fostering and promoting. Getting into terminology can be tricky, but preserving, I would go with, let's say we need to preserve home languages. It's one of the democratic principles of multilingualism. So preserving is definitely yes. Promoting a language in the process, because once you start promoting, probably you will be able to foster, you will be able to preserve. So they're interrelated. I won't get into whether they can be used synonymously or not. I won't get into that. That'll be slightly tricky right now, because I'll be deviating if I do that right now. But we can discuss, Sonia, Sharmin, you are there on Facebook, I know. So you can always get back to this with this question, get back to me with this question. We can talk about this. Comfortable language will depend on the learner's comfort and the teacher's comfort. You need to negotiate in the classroom. What is comfortable should be determined by you. I cannot decide right now what is comfortable for your students and for you. You should decide. You are in a better position than I am right now. I think it's time for the next speaker.
Sir,
I'll close it.
Sir, I have one question regarding to spoken English and grammatical English. And what is the right method to tell to communicate English language in front of all of you, to tell spoken English or grammatical English? Which actually, sir, which English language should I tell?
See, it depends on the space, the place where you are using English. Let's say you are talking to your friends, it should be the message. So it should be, you should focus on the message, how to communicate it, and how to communicate the message, that should be prioritized there. But in a situation, let's say you are teaching in a classroom, let's say you are teaching your students speaking, then grammatically correct English is a good option because you are a model for your students. So if you are a correct, accurate model, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing for students because you are a good model for them. So in that case, it should be grammatically correct, and you should make sure that you are not using wrong English. Thank you.
One more question. I just have one more question. This, how to deal with the students who belong to the tribal communities. Okay, for example, teaching English to those people. So, what are the strategies that can be taken at the time of teaching English to them?
I think some of the strategies we talked about a few minutes ago. You can begin with letting them respond to, let's say, pieces of text in their own language, and should encourage them to respond, even if give them a choice, whichever language you want to use, and let them have this freedom to choose the language they want to use. And you should encourage them to use their own language. If they want to use, they can use their own language and respond to your questions, to others' questions, to participate in discussions. Sometimes you can also fall back on them and ask them, what is the meaning of this word in your language? And that will encourage them, or give them this satisfaction, give them this happiness that their language also matters and matters to you a lot. And that's something that will improve their self-esteem also, and how they think about their language. That's something that you can talk about.
And what are the specific deficits that I need to focus on at the time of teaching English to them?
I think you should focus on their advantages rather than deficits. You should start with what they are able to do in their own languages rather than focusing on what they are not able to do in English. So let's start with what they are able to do in their own language or in their home languages, and then move to English and think about what they need to learn in English. Don't start with a deficit approach. Always go with what they have rather than what they don't have. That will be a better approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable speech, and really it was interactive. And next speaker is Dr. Bonini Lahiri. So I'd like to introduce her. Dr. Bonini Lahiri has completed her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, in linguistics. Before joining IIT KGP as an assistant professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, she has taught several years in Jadavpur University. Her research areas of interest include exploring and documenting minority languages, endangered languages, topology, etc. Ma'am, the platform is yours.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction and the welcome. So I'll share my screen. Just give me a minute. Do I have the right to present?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Just a minute. I believe it's visible now.
It's presenting, ma'am. It will take a little. Yes, now it's visible.
Oh, okay.
Kindly make it full screen.
Yeah, I have already made it full screen.
Okay.
Is it visible?
It's visible, but full screen is not visible. I mean,
Okay.
I think it will take little time. In Google Meet, it takes little time.
Yeah. Is it full now? Full screen now?
No, ma'am, it's not full screen. Just type F11. You have.
Right.
It is full screen. It is full screen. Full screen has to be done by the participants. It's full screen. It's visible, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so I hope it's visible to all of you. Good afternoon to all of you, and I will talk about the minor and the minoritized languages. So, as we were in the earlier speaker was talking about inclusion of the mother tongue or the home language. So, are we really doing that? Do we really find the minor languages in the classroom? And by minor languages, I mean the smaller languages like Koda, Mahali, Toto. And when I say small language, what do I mean? Do I mean that these languages are small because they have less population, or why I am saying they are minor or minoritized? To know that, we need to know what is actually minority language or minoritized languages, especially in Indian context. So here my talk is divided into three parts. First, in the first part, I will talk about minority and minoritized languages in Indian context. Basically, what is minority language? How can we distinguish between a minority language, endangered languages? And when I say minority language, that implies that there is a language which is major language or major languages. And when I talk about minority or minoritized languages, I should talk a little about sign language, because not doing that will be injustice to sign language. So I will quickly talk about that. Then I will talk about linguistic rights and their importance, how these languages need to be included in education or in different domains like health, economy, and how their inclusion can actually help in ecological systems or in maintaining biodiversity. So we have linguistic rights, we have laws, we try to imply them, but then also we see that there is this division of the major and the minor. Why so? That's largely because there are various challenges of a multilingual society like ours. So what are the challenges? Why do we need to standardize a language? And if we want to standardize, what are the problems that we face? So I will also talk about that. So coming to the first part, the minority language. Using minority language to describe a language means that implies that there is a majority language in that context. So how are we dividing languages, like one is major and another is minor? Do we really talk about demography? Do we talk about majority because the majority population speaks it? Or does it depend on the functions? So it's all mixed up. It's not very clear cut. I can't say that, okay, this the large population speaks this language, that's why it's a major language. While only few speak this language, so this is a minor language. We can't say that. And of course, there is power issues, prestige issues, all interrelated. The speakers of the language share specific facilities that differentiate them from the rest of the larger communities when we talk about minor language. And of course, there is that sense of identity and culture related with the language. So whenever we talk about this minor language, of course, demography is there, but not totally. Of course, power is there. And when I say that demography is not totally the point, that means that in a population, if the majority is speaking one language, then that is the major language, while if a few people are speaking another language, that is the minor language. We can't say that. And English is a good example for that. Because we know that in India, there are very few mother tongue speakers of English. But still, English is a major language in our country. Not only about mother tongue, in very, very few people can actually speak very, if you want to say very chaste English. We use Indian English, right? We speak Indian English. Some of us can't even speak properly, but we do use. But still we see that English is quite powerful in our country. And of course, it's not at all a minor or minoritized language. Why so? I will come to that, why so. So before that, I will talk about the scenario, Indian scenario. In India, we have 22 scheduled languages. And of course, Hindi and English are the official languages of our country. So these 22 languages, they are scheduled languages, and when a language becomes scheduled language, like recently Santhali and Maithili, these were included in this list. Earlier they were not there. So, like in the case of Santhali, we can see when a language gets included in this list, we see that the language is included in the school curriculum. We see books are getting published in this language, and then when books are being published, the language is introduced in the school. Of course, then the prestige also grows for that language. So earlier Santhali speakers, they at times hesitated to say that they are Santhali speakers. They like to get merged with the other major groups. But now, with the inclusion in the age schedule, they not only they identify themselves as Santhali speakers, but the neighboring small languages like Mahali, Oda, some of them, they try to get themselves merged with Santhali. So, and this I am saying from my own fieldwork actually. So, this is my experience, which I found in the field with my colleagues. So these Mahali speakers, when we were asking them that whether they are Mahali speakers or not, they were saying, yes, we speak Mahali, but we are Santhali. Now we are shifting to Santhali. And why so? Because Santhali has been included in the list, but that is not important for them. What is important for them is that the language is included in the schools now. The language is, some of the textbooks are there published in this language. And slowly people now recognize Santhali as a language. But when a speaker says that he or she is a speaker of Mahali, no one recognizes, no one understands. And at times there are also prestige issues. So one might say that Mahali, what is that language? Oh, this is a language of illiterate people or something like that. Comments like that are also made in our society. So it's better to get identify oneself with some recognized language. That is the case which we find sometimes, and that's why when we have some law or when the language gets included in the age schedule, it gets prestige, and prestige is very important for a speaker to keep the speakers loyal to their language. So this is the hierarchy that we often find in our society, in Indian society. We have the national official languages in the top, Hindi and English, followed by the regional official languages. So There are 22 scheduled languages, and other than that also there are some local regional languages. And then there are smaller local languages like Bhojpuri, Maghi, Maithili, Nishi, Kurmali. All these are local languages, and they have quite a good number of speakers. But then we don't find these languages represented much in the education domain or in any other domain of the society. We don't find much books in these languages. We don't find means of entertainment in these languages. But of course, these languages are spoken by a huge number of speakers. And then at the end, we can say, dying are these languages, like they are really vulnerable and endangered. Himal, Mahali, Munpa, Jenukurumba. So these are some very few names. We can find a really long list. And these languages are endangered because, of course, when there are local languages like Bhojpuri, Garhwali, Nichi, Kurmali, they have good number of speakers. But when these speakers have to shift to other major languages, because there is no facilities available in these languages, then slowly these languages become vulnerable and leading to endangerment of these languages. So this is the case, and this is the hierarchy which we find in Indian linguistic scenarios. And of course, we have some other languages in state official languages. Like in West Bengal, we have recently Kamtapuri, Rajvamshi, Kurmali, these were also included as official languages. But as you see that this change is very new, we still don't find much books, and especially when we talk about textbooks, we hardly find any textbooks in these languages. We hardly find any journals or newspapers in these languages. So it's really difficult. But our country has some of the safeguards for the minor and endangered languages. Though implementation is not always there, but yeah, at least we have the rules and the regulations. So the Supreme Court of India in 1958 represented a parameter for defining a minority language as the language of the minority community. So what do we mean by the minority community? It stated that which is defined as a community numerically less than 50% of the total population. But that can't be held true in the present scenario, as there is no linguistic group in India which can claim the 50% of speakers. For Hindi also we don't have 50% of speakers. So there is, we are multilingual country, and we don't have any one language which has more than 50% of speakers. So there lies a problem. Secondly, some languages are less represented in some states. So like Bhojpuri is spoken in Bihar by quite a good number of speakers, but of course we will not find Bhojpuri speakers in, say, Bengal or in Delhi, right? Similarly, when we say Hindi is spoken in Bihar, which type of Hindi are we talking about? Because the Hindi which is spoken in, say, Delhi is not spoken in Bihar. So that points towards the problem of varieties as well. I will come to that as well at the end. So we can see that languages lacking political, economic, or cultural power are listed as minority language. So for some languages, it's really difficult to categorize them. But for some of the other languages, it's very, very easy to categorize them. Like for most of the tribal languages of our country, where we can find that these, we don't find by demography also, there are very less speakers of these languages. And also we find these languages very less represented and less resourced. We don't find resources in these languages, and of course we don't find representations of these languages in different domains of life. In contrast to these smaller or tribal languages, if we see Sanskrit, you can say that Sanskrit is also spoken by very few number of speakers. We hardly find speakers of Sanskrit. But still it's not a minor language. Why? Because we find lots and lots of text in this language. Lots of people are still working and studying and publishing materials in this language. So if you want to study, you can really get books in Sanskrit. And one more reason, Sanskrit has a specific domain of functionality, which we don't find for the other languages. For any cultural or religious customs in Hindu religion, we find Sanskrit has a strong position. But for the other tribal languages, it's difficult to find. So, and when I say that Hindu religion it's vast, so we can see that in lots of different parts of our country, Sanskrit is being used for that purpose, other than other users, which we also find, like study. These are about the minority languages when I talk about oral languages, and I will come to it again. Quickly, I will also talk about sign language, as we know that sign language is also not vastly used, and this is a sign language are taken as the minority language in every part of the world. So it's not only about India. Of course, in India it's quite minoritized, but in every part of the world it is a minor language, because when we talk about language, we generally think as default, we think about oral language. We totally ignore out sign language. So it has been marked that it is minoritized minority language.
Ma'am, slides are not changing.
Really, that in this slide,
Actually, it's stuck in the first slide only.
I am in the 10th slide. Oh, you should have wanted this out earlier. So what do I need to do? Should I?
Press F11, I think. Okay. It will show full screen.
No, in the smaller screen also you can't see the slide.
I think you just exited from the.
Sorry.
I think you have your presentation has been stopped. Kindly share it once again and go to. It's a technical glitch, little bit. Sorry for that.
No, it's fine. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, it's visible. Please continue, ma'am. It's okay.
So, are you? Can you see slide number 10?
Yes, ma'am. We can.
Okay.
We can see it.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Okay. So. Yeah, so I was talking about sign languages, and I wanted to point it out that when we talk about minor or minoritized languages, we need to also point out to us the sign language, which we often we don't talk about it. And sign languages also have different varieties, and the varieties have been marked by various catalogs like etnologues. So New Zealand is the only country which has included sign language as a national language along with the other oral language. So other than that, we really find sign language in a vulnerable state, while we know that it is quite it has a lot of users. So okay, coming back to again so why also we find sign languages less represented. One of the reasons is also functional transparency. And when we talk about functional transparency, that is also there for the oral language. So what do I mean by functional transparency? I mean that in how many domains a language can be represented. So as I said, that Sanskrit is represented in functions expressing Hindu rituals. So we know that English is mostly used in the domain of education. Hindi for movies we can easily find in non-Hindi speaking belt as well. So people do watch Hindi movies. So when we find that the functional transparency is narrow, we find that there is less functionality of the language, then of course the language gets minoritized. So functional load is good for a language. So if a language has more functional load, then that means the language is healthy. As you can see in this figure, if we talk about, say, Mahali or any other small language, we mostly see that the language is used in the home domain. But in contrast to that, if you look at Bangla, say Bangla, Hindi, or any other major language like Tamil, Telugu, we can see that these languages can be used other than in the home. These languages are also used for entertainment, for education, for office, for various other purposes. We can easily find books, journals used for entertainment, and these languages are also largely represented in the technology. So we have resources for these languages, but for these minor languages, we don't have. So if I want to type in Bangla, I can do that in my home. But if I want to do that in some other smaller language, it's difficult for me to do that. I can easily find.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Slide is not changing once again. Yeah. I think you are forgetting.
What?
I think you are forgetting. And now it's okay. Now it's okay.
I have already done that.
Okay. Okay. Now it's visible. 13. Slide number 13.
I think there is some issue with the. Can it be with my internet or something? Or okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible, but in between sometimes it is making problem. Okay, but it's visible. It's now slide number 13.
Ma'am, please go with from current slides. Ma'am, please go with from current slide. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I was saying that when if I want to say use machine translation for Bangla to Hindi or Bangla to English, I can do that. But for the other smaller languages, we don't find that. So we don't find the representation in technology. We don't find representations in, say, other, like we don't find textbooks, we don't find entertainment. So these are, and also we can't use it. Like if someone wants to use Mahali in the classroom, then also there is difficulty because it's difficult to find Mahali teachers. So who will teach or who will talk with the students in that language? So a primary school in these districts where these languages are spoken, we find lots of languages like Mahali, Koda, Lodha. So what do you expect from the teacher? The teacher can't know all these languages. So how can there be communication? How can this gap be fulfilled? Right. So that is also the problem, and that's why the functionality load decreases for this language. So the Mahali student needs to learn the other language to communicate with or with his or her teacher, because they can't use the language in the class. So that's a major problem, major crisis. While the same crisis is not there for, say, English. So English is not used in the home domain, but in the education, in the business, in other domains of life, English can be used. So that's what makes these languages even, that's what makes these languages marginalized or smaller. So I have changed the slide. Is it visible?
No, ma'am. It's still in the previous slide. I mean, slide number 13.
I don't understand why is this happening. This should not happen. Is it visible now?
You have stopped the sharing, so it's not right now there.
I'm so sorry for this, but I don't understand this. Really doesn't happen. I hope it's better.
Yeah, it's visible now. But ma'am, you just kindly check whether the slides are getting changed by pressing the upward and down arrow on the keyboards.
So for me, they are getting changed. I can see the change.
Yeah, you can see, but we cannot see. That's why we just want to confirm it.
It's okay. Now it is better.
It's
Yes,
right
ma'am.
now on 14, slide number 14.
Right.
But
I am okay. Yeah. Okay. So actually, I think if I am making it full screen, then that's the problem. So this time I have not made it full screen.
Ma'am, every time you're moving to the next slide, please click on the left-hand side. The red color outline box is showing. So through that, we can see that the slide is changing probably.
So now the slide is visible. I have not made it full screen. So is it okay for you?
It's visible, ma'am. It's clearly visible. Every time you're moving to the next slide, on the left-hand side, we can see the red outline. On that, if we click, probably it will move down.
Okay. Okay, let me try that. So yeah. So when I am saying about these functionality issues, then of course prestige and power is also related to that, resulting in socio-political reasons. So we were in this village, in Lodha village, just there in the primary school of Lodha. There we went there to collect Lodha, we went there to collect linguistic samples of Lodha. And we went to the primary school, and there what we find was very, very strange that these teachers, they knew that we will visit them, so they had prepared their children well and all. So lots of children were there in the classroom and all. But then we actually wanted linguistic samples of Lodha language, but they were speaking in Bangla. They wanted to recite poems in Bangla, they wanted to sing in Bangla. And when we asked them in Lodha, the teachers were not very encouraging. Rather, they were saying, Lodha, what will you do? Why do you want to listen to Lodha? Because it's the language of illiterate people, it's the language of uncultured people. And then there are also some taboos related to, especially to Lodha community, as Britishers had termed them as the criminal tribe. So, which is very, very unfortunate. And the most unfortunate part is that still that mentality is there, and people do think that this community is criminal community, and that's why the children are not encouraged to speak their language in the classroom. Not only in their classroom, in fact, they are said to speak in Bangla even in their home. Why so? Because there is no prestige related to Lodha, rather there is some negative attitude related to the language. So these small children of say like class 1, class 2, they are from that very tender age, they are asked not to speak the language because a negative attitude is related to the language within the community and more outside the community. So these teachers, they say that you have to be well educated, you will get a good job, but then you should speak Bangla, you should speak learn English. Don't speak this language of uncultured, illiterate people. That's what is the attitude for this language. So of course, I'm not saying that this is the case or this is the scenario everywhere, but that's what we witnessed in this village, Lodha village. And of course, I was not alone. We went with a team, so we were shocked actually to hear that. And we tried to talk to the teachers and ask them why this type of attitude and why are they not encouraged. And the reason was that what will they do if they learn Lodha? Which was not false. They say that where will they use Lodha? They can't use the language outside the village. There is no textbook in that language, and that's not a language which literate people should speak. Some of the points are relevant, like, of course, only by learning Lodha they will not get a job, or only by learning Lodha they they can't find textbooks in their language. But then, in a multilingual society, learning Lotha along with Bangla is also possible. Or making these younger children or students learning the concept of say science or social sciences in Lotha can be possible. But then there is the problem of this attitude towards the language. So that what that leads to even minoritizing these minor languages and leading to, of course, endangerment. So these small children, they from this tender age, they know that they should not speak their language. That language is not good. That language is not prestigious. So they are slowly shifting to us. So what do you think when they will grow up? What do they do? They will stick to Bangla or any other major language. Mostly Bangla because they are in. Okay. So,
খুলেও হ্যাঁ
mute your mic or yeah, thank you. And then there is this indirect pressure of getting shifting to the major language. And when we talk about language, of course, there is shift in the culture, there is shift in the identity. And they actually are mixed up together. So shift in the culture also leads to the shift in the language. Like when we visited Koda village, earlier Koda people, they used to worship nature. Now also they do that. But recent development is that they are worshipping idols. So you can see there is this picture of some goddess in the idol is there. So earlier it was not that. So it is not very indigenous to them. They used to worship trees, rain, all this, but not idol worship was not part of their culture. But now they have started doing it with plastic flowers and all those you can see. Similarly, in the Dhimal village, I once visited Dhimal village in 2019, and then there was no temple because they are also nature worshippers. But recently, again, when I visited in 2015, and then I visited in, I think, after 4 years. And then what I saw that they have a newly made temple. The picture you can see that this is quite a new temple. And they were very excited and they took me to the temple to see we have a new temple in our village. So why this temple? This is making them shifting, there is a shift. We can easily see that from worshipping the nature, they are shifting in worshipping in the temple. Why so? Because the neighbors are doing it. The neighbors are Rajbongshi, the neighbors are Bengali and Nepali. So they are doing that. So there is that indirect pressure of shift. And then we are talking about this cultural shift. Of course, there is the shift in the language as well. Because when they are worshipping in the temple, their own terms for the gods are being replaced with the terms used in other neighboring communities. So now they worship Parvati, now they worship Shiv. But earlier they used to worship trees and they had various different terms for that. So we can see that slowly the language along with that, it is leading to endangerment of the language. And this is majorly because there is that major language surrounding these smaller, minor languages. In the name of development also we can find that in the name of development, they are given modern education, and that also in these major languages, which is again somehow indirectly pressurizing them to shift. And when we talk about this shift or the status of minority language, economy plays, of course, a major role. In this picture, you can see these bamboo baskets. I hope you can see the slide, right? I am on slide number 17.
Yes, ma'am, it's right.
see these bamboo baskets. These are these was the major occupation of Mahali community. They used to make these bamboo baskets and sell them in the local market. But now, slowly, these baskets are being replaced with the plastic baskets. So what's happening now? They don't have much sell. They can't sell it, and that's why they are shifting to the big cities for in search of jobs. And when they are shifting, of course, they have to make a shift in their language as well. Because in Kolkata, they can hardly find any Mahali speakers. So they learn Bangla, and they try to educate their children in Bangla so that they can get even better jobs. And that also leads to a negative attitude towards their language, leading to language endangerment. So how can that be helped? One steps to bring these minor languages in the mainstream. One way of doing that is by recognizing that okay, these are the problems, these are the languages, and if we find tools or resources in these languages, and when I say resources, I mean both. In today's digital world, we need to find digital resources and also non-digital resources like textbooks, basic newspaper, along with e-newspapers if possible. Various types of apps which can be made for these minor languages. So where through these apps they can learn very basic language skills, or they can learn, say, English or Bangla using their own language. We recently made an app for Mundari language where they can use Mundari to learn Bangla and learn English as well. So these type of apps, if they are there, they can help them encourage their own language. Right. So and even this app is made in such a way that it looks like a gaming app. So word game app, like we have for we have this type of word gaming apps. We can easily find for English. We have lots of them. For Bangla also we have few. So like that, if we can have for the smaller languages, these apps can teach the younger children and also help them use their own language. At the same time, they can also entertain them. Of course, making laws can help, and more than that, implementing those laws and establishing and protecting educational linguistic rights. So they have everyone has the right of getting educated in their own language. So our constitution gives us that right. So if that right is established and protected, of course, that the languages can be brought into the mainstream. So linguistic rights and its importance lies in the fact that when these children, as I'm sure most of you know, when the children are taught in their own mother tongue or in their home language, of course, there is a better result. So, and we have testimonies for that. So when these children are taught concepts in their own tongue, the result is good. We have less dropouts, and of course, children feel more engaged in the classroom. And in the same time, not only in the education domain, if you look at health domain or in any other domain, always the use of one's own tongue is more useful. So in this COVID scenario, if there are various templates, pamphlets, or there are announcements in phones which we hear when we ring someone, the announcements are made in some language which I don't understand, actually doesn't help me. If I get pamphlets in making me aware about COVID, written in some other language, then that doesn't make much, it is not helpful for me. Rather, it is also wastage of the money, of the government money, or the money who has published or used these pamphlets. So basically what happens that we are wasting the money by creating awareness in some other language. But when we are using the native language of the community understands us better, and the link is created, and the community also feels included. So that means it is important to include these minor languages in the mainstream, and that can be done through these linguistic rights. In Vietnam, it was seen that when the midwives and the patients could share the language, of course, the result was better. So we know that when a patient and doctor, they can use the same language, then of course the patient will be more comfortable and easily can convey his or her problem. So that is there. And there are lots of organizations which are making documents and trying to establish these linguistic laws and trying to enforce them. So some of these are here. So I think I am running short on time, so I will quickly skip this and I will talk about our country where we have constitutional safeguards, where it is said that any section of the citizens residing in the territory of India or any other part of our country can actually use his or her own language. So for education purpose also one can do that, and one can also ask for financial help from the state for doing that. So that right we do have, we can have that, and that is also being used. For Mundari, the community has started their own Sunday schools. So these are weekly schools held only on Sunday. So in these Sunday schools, what happens? Mundari children, they go to the school and they are taught the basic concepts of science, social sciences in Mundari. And these schools, they have also published textbooks. So there are some textbooks, the basic textbooks of social sciences, of sciences, of math, and all this in Mundari. So the children, they go to the mainstream, school on the weekdays, and the concepts are clarified in their own mother tongue on Sundays in these Mundari schools. So I found this very, very interesting and also very inspiring. So they have books of math, of social sciences in their own tongue. So that helps them to learn. And the gap which is made in the mainstream school where the medium is Bangla, that gap is fulfilled in these Sunday schools. So that type of if we have that type of models, and if those can be made for these smaller languages, then that can be really helpful for the community members. So we have laws, we have rules, yet we see that there is still a gap between these minor languages and the major languages. And we see why the languages are getting minoritized, leading to endangerment of the languages. Why do we see that? So one of the problems is that how do we differentiate or distinguish between the varieties and the languages? That's a major challenge of a multilingual society like ours. So one problem is that for some languages like Gondi is a language which is spoken in say 5 or 6 states of our country. So when we need to publish a textbook in Gondi, which Gondi should we take? Because there are different varieties of Gondi in different states of our country. So which Gondi should be taken as the representative of all the Gondis? Because the Gondi spoken in Madhya Pradesh is different from the Gondi spoken in Orissa. So these are different varieties. So which variety should we pick? And when we are choosing one variety over the other, then there are other problems, like the people will not be very happy with that variety. So if I choose, say, the variety of Orissa, the Madhya Pradesh, the Chhattisgarh people, they will not be very happy with that idea. And that will also mean that I am minoritizing these varieties, the variety which is spoken in Chhattisgarh or in Madhya Pradesh, because I am prioritizing the variety of Orissa. So that problem lies. And if I don't standardize, or if I don't pick or choose one variety, then what do I do? Do I publish books in all these varieties? Is that possible? So these are some of the major challenges which we do face, and that's why there lies a gap. Secondly, when we talk about languages, uh, sometimes, for example, for Hindi, in census 2011, you will see that there are around, there are more than 50 varieties of Hindi listed in the language census. So, are all these varieties of Hindi? So, Kurmali comes as a variety of Hindi. Then there are Chhattisgarhi. There are different languages which all are clubbed together under Hindi. So, are they all varieties of Hindi? And when we say that these all are varieties of Hindi, then one can also say that the textbook in Hindi can actually be used for, say, a Kurmali speaker or, say, a Bhojpuri speaker, because these are varieties of Hindi. But is it really so? So that is again another problem. So we need to know that where can we differentiate between the language and its variety? There is a continuum, and where should one can divide between the language, and is that even possible to do that or not? So, for example, Suryapuri is a language which is spoken in West Bengal and in some parts of Bihar. So, Suryapuri has been marked as a variety of Rajbangshi. Suryapuri has also been taken as a variety of Maithili. Suryapuri has also been talked about as a variety of Bangla. So, what? Is it a variety of Bangla? Is it a variety of Maithili? Or is it another language? It's not variety of any of these languages. It has its own identity. It is a different language. So if we don't recognize Suryapuri as another language, then of course we will not try to create resources for the language. We will think that, okay, Bangla textbooks will suffice for Suryapuri students, or say Rajbangshi textbooks will be good enough for the Suryapuri students. So we need to recognize that. We need to identify the languages, and of course then only we can create the resources. Same is the case for Kurmali, even more complicated, because Kurmali is also spoken in Madhya Pradesh, in Orissa, in Jharkhand, in West Bengal. So we have more states here. So, and there is a huge number of Kurmali population, Kurmali speaking people, as you can see. Though Kurmali is studied in Ranchi University in PG level, but then do we find very primary level books in Kurmali? We don't find. Why? Because again, it's not much used in schools, and then when we talk about Kurmali, or we are trying to create some resources for Kurmali, which Kurmali should we choose? The Kurmali spoken in Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, and with Kurmali we also have the problem of script. In West Bengal, Bangla script is used. In Orissa, Oriya script is used. In Jharkhand, Devanagari script is used. So the books are also in different scripts. So the speaker speaking Kurmali in West Bengal can't read the book published from Jharkhand because it's in Devanagari, or can't read the book published from Orissa. So their line is the gap. So if if these books are translated or written in Bangla script for the Bangla Kurmali speakers, then that can be achieved. But it's not so. So there lies a huge gap actually. And again, there is also that debate that whether Kurmali is a variety of Bangla or variety of Maghi or variety of Hindi. Of course, census marks it as a variety of Hindi, but if we look at it and study the grammar and phonology, we find that it's actually near to Bangla than, it's closer to Bangla than Hindi. So these are some of the challenges, and of course I don't have answers for these challenges. These are points which we can think about, which we can discuss, and of course, with that I will end my talk here, and I am ready to take questions and queries, and also open to suggestions if you have.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable presentation, and you have discussed about multilingualism and how minority language has been attributed negative connotations, and with few examples from minoritized languages. So if you have any question, one or two, you can ask. Ma'am, there is one question in the chat box, so kindly check if you're. Rajbangshi is a language that is spoken in entire North Bengal.
Yeah. So Dr. Suraj is right. Yes, right. As you have rightly said that there is a huge population of Rajbangshi speakers. So that's what I was saying. As I marked for Kurmani, there is a huge number of speakers for Kurmani as well. So there are various such languages, the population. So we can't say that a language gets minoritized due to its demography, because we can see that there are lots of speakers, yet we see that the language is not well represented. So recognizing the language is politically recognizing it is a total political issue. We see that there are at times language activists, and then there are politics, and then some of the language gets included in the 8th schedule. But what as community we can do, or what as researchers or people working for languages, what we can do is that we can create resources in these languages. So when resources are created, then of course the speakers feel motivated, and these speakers can use their language. Resources in every sense, as I said. Resources, digital resources, non-digital resources, if resources are met. And this is a step which can largely come from within the community. Because the community knows its language, so it's always better if they have this initiative. As I also gave you the example of Mundari Sunday School. That was an initiative started from the community. They actually started their own Sunday schools where the Mundari speakers, they try to teach the students in Mundari. And for Rajbangshi, we do find lots of journals published, lots of books are being published in Rajbangshi nowadays. So when creating resources is quite a big step for making the language more visible. That's what I would like to say.
Any more question? Okay. Thank you. We'll go to the. Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable presentation. Yes, Dr. Pradeep Kumar Sengupta has asked one question.
Yes. So Koda is the language of Koda tribe, but a survey is done shows they do not use it. Why? No, I don't know which survey. Koda and Koda, they are actually same, yes, but they do use the language. The language is endangered, of course, but I won't say that which survey are you talking about? Can you say that? Because a survey which we did from Jadavpuri University, we saw that people there are villages where the language is spoken. Of course, there is a very less number of people who speak the language, but the language is quite used within the community.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We'll go to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Mangai J. Wilson. Dr. J. Mangai Wilson has been teaching English language and literature in India for more than 2 decades. Presently, she is working as Dean of Academic Affairs and HOD in the Department of English, Ethiraj College for Women in Chennai. She has completed her PhD from University of Madras, and she is the national convener of ELTI chapters and associate of IATE, FL and TESOL. So ma'am, now it's your turn.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Thank you very much for the introduction. Nice introduction, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. And I really thank the speakers, two good speakers from Mr. Mohapatra and Bornini ma'am. It was really informative and helpful for us to fine-tune our knowledge on discourses related to language and education. So I would like to begin mine. And I have one more portal to share my screen. We shall begin our talk now. Making discourses on language and education. When we begin this topic, alternative narrative, what should be our focus on discourse? Let us explore that. First, focus would be on oral, written, and graphic text, work to shape and construct our views. You can register your observation in chat box. What are all the oral records come into your mind when we talk about oral literature? Written, we have been using it, and graphic text. Only this pandemic time we started using graphic text, and it's really helpful. Graphic text, we can bring in that visuals in front of us to shape and construct our views. So the focus of discourse should be on the oral, written, and graphic, and audio books too. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your input. And I really appreciate you participate. It's interactive too. Yeah. So dominant discourses shape our attitudes. What are the dominant discourses that shapes our attitudes, opinions, and beliefs in such ways as to make those beliefs appear natural and common sense? So we have to connect it with common sense. At the same time, we have to project that as natural. So what are the dominant discourses that shapes our attitudes, that shapes our opinions, that shapes our beliefs? We have to think on that. So what are the discourses that come into your mind when it comes to attitude, opinion, and belief? Could you type your observation answers in the in call messages? Okay. So when you're ready, you can share it in our in call messages. So what are the attitudes that shape our shapers, ideas? Okay, next slide. So we are in the first slide. The previous slide. We'll move on to the previous slide. What are all the attitudes? So, what are we going to do that? Counter discourses at a cost, that is derision and ridicule, repetition that damages. So these are all counter discourses that stop. So first, focus on written, oral, and graphic text. Then you shape your attitudes, opinions, and beliefs. Beware of counter discourses, that is, derision, ridicule, and reputation. How it damages our reputation. Let's move on to the next part. Next, we'll move on to the next slide. So, what is dominant discourse? Let us understand what is dominant discourse. Dominant discourse is a way of speaking. How we speak, our body language. It comprises of everything: our body language, how we interact with others, and how we behave or behaving on any given topic. So any given topic, you have to, just like an actor, you have to shape it up, and you should include the body language, your attitude, and everything. It encompasses everything. For that, it helps. So the language helps. Language helps us to shape the way we speak, the way we behave. It gives everything. It encompasses everything. So it is the language and actions that appear most prevalently within a given society. So the language, it really helps the dominant discourse. It helps us to shape our attitude. These behaviors and patterns of our speech and writing reflect the ideologies of those who have the most power in the society. So it really affects the society around. It really reflects our personality, reflects our ideologies to the society. Dominant discourse is nothing but the way we speak, the way we behave, the way we project ourselves to the society. So the dominant discourses shape our attitudes, our opinions, and beliefs, such ways as to make those beliefs appear natural, and it's common. It should be spontaneous. Dominant discourse should be spontaneous. It shapes our attitude. Whereas classroom discourse is traditionally described as the language, both oral and written. So we have second language, we have third language too, and so we learn a foreign language. Good, Pradeep Kumar, for the message. So one of your scholar working on that. So you can discuss along those lines. So classroom discourse is described in a different way. It involves both oral and written, whereas the dominant discourse reflects our inborn it's within an individual. So that's a difference between dominant discourse and classroom discourse. Whereas in classroom discourse, we do learn foreign language, and sometimes we do well. We just make it as a dominant discourse, so that we use the classroom discourse to make use of that, to convert that as natural, to convert our attitude towards that, and we project ourselves as teachers to the students in the classroom for the purpose of communication. So this is called as dominant discourse. So it's clarified now, and we are we are clear about the dominant discourse and classroom discourse, the difference between classroom discourse and dominant discourse. Let's move on to the next part, the next slide. We started off with why we should focus on a dominant discourse, how it plays a pivotal role, and then how it helps us. And we are trying to understand what is dominant discourse. Now we understood what is dominant discourse. Let's move on to the next slide to see the next level of focus. Next level of focus should be on how to fine tune our dominant discourse. How to fine tune our dominant discourse. How do we fine tune our dominant discourse? What are alternative discourses? First, we discuss what is dominant discourse, and then now we are going to say what are alternative discourses. So alternative discourses are that present themselves as alternatives to what they regard as the traditional one, Orientalist, or ecocentric language teaching methods. So these are the alternative discourses. Dominant discourse, it's within, and classroom discourse is both oral and written. And at the same time, we concentrate on alternative discourse, that is Orientalist method and Eurocentric language teaching method. So these are the methods followed in classrooms as teachers by us. Let's move on to the next one. What are the competing discourses? Competing discourses, there are two. One is dominant, the other one is alternative. The dominant is a traditional one, hard, authoritarian, and we have a command over that, and we have authority over that. When you have a dominant discourse, when you use your dominant discourse for oral presentations, it is fully power packed. You have command over that, and you are the authority there. At the same time, the alternative discourse, when you use alternative discourse, it's progressive. You can change it, and it is soft and laissez-faire, and you have power with it. You have power with it. Dominant, power over it, but alternative discourse, power with it, and it empowers you. Alternative discourse empowers you. So when you have a resource, when you have some supporting supporting ideas to present yourself in a class as a teacher, in education, and in the field of academia, then that empowers you. The alternative discourse empowers you. So there are some novel ways of teaching language. Now we understood what is dominant and what is alternative. If you have any other doubts for clarification, you can type that in message inbox. We can discuss it when we have our discussion time. And now we are clear about the scope, why it is important, why we should concentrate on dominant discourse and other thing, and we just got to know what is a dominant discourse and what are our alternative discourses available and how it can be used in our classroom and classroom discourse too. Now I would like to throw some light on some novel ways to teach language. So we are familiar with a dominant discourse, classroom discourse, and alternative discourse. So first, and foremost one I would like to suggest is the silent way. What do we mean by the silent way? The central characteristic is the teacher should remain as silent as possible. So, this is the best method. You have to allow your learners to come up with their dominant discourse. You should allow the learners to think on their own, just float some ideas and then think on their own. Be silent in class, the silent way. So the main reason is to devolve as much autonomy and decision making as possible to your learners. So that's the main reason. So here, your role as teacher. So how dominant discourse and classroom discourses are interrelated? Dominant discourse, you use your dominant discourse to make a powerful presentation, presentation in class. You use your body language as a teacher, and you use your attitude as teacher, and both are interrelated to integrate the dominant and alternative and present it to your learners. So these are interrelated, and both are connected with oral and written resources. So that becomes dominant when you present yourself as a teacher in class in silent way. You allow your learners to present themselves in class with the use of the dominant discourse. So here, your role is to monitor. Teacher's role is to monitor actively. You have to monitor. You have to go around the class and lead pronunciation practice too. So you can help them to modify their pronunciation. You can help them to shape up their attitude, and you can help them to shape up their approach in class. And at the same time, you help them to make decisions. You help them to move and introduce new structures and support their efforts, appreciate their efforts, and at the same time, as a teacher, you add on to their efforts. This maybe, for example, mean like voiceover. So you can so, and in that way, they'll feel comfortable. You make your learners feel comfortable. You watch them silently and you allow them to perform, and you give full autonomy to your learners to present themselves. So they present their dominant discourse in a natural way. They convert that in a natural way and they present it in class. And you can shape up their ideas like gestures, and you when you intervene to draw the attention, so the whole class will be under your control. You can manage your class there, and it attracts your learners' attention to when you correct their errors, and at the same time you make the whole class to learn the correct pronunciation, the correct way to express that. You teach body language, it encompasses everything. So in that way, this silent way helps a teacher in a classroom to shape their dominant discourse. So it's important to note that the teacher is not always silent. You have to be attentive. You have to be with them. You have to monitor them fully. And in between, you are just giving your 90% of your time, and you're alert, and you move around and make them participate in class. Make each and every individual learner, even a slow learner, would be alert to participate in class. In that way, you just bring back 90% participation, nearly 90 to 99% participation in class. All of them happily participate in class. When the teacher does, he or when we speak in class, when teachers speak in class, they say something what they understood, their interpretation. It would be their interpretation. It would be a monologue. It would be a monologue. It looks as if they project themselves in class, their expertise, and then um, uh, their their power over language and other things. At the same time, as a teacher, when you remain silent, you are giving autonomy to your learners. You are just making them to come up with their own potential, come up with their own dominant discourse. In that way, it involves the whole class, and they'll be happy the end of the day when they use their talent. So this way is a powerful way for a teacher to use it in the classroom discourse. Next one, total physical response. The next method is total physical response. Here, the teacher takes on the role of a parent teaching a child. It's like one-on-one. A parent teaching a child using commands to force learners based on the language he or she uses. For example, at the beginner's level, at the primary level, the teacher may use imperatives such as bring me your chair, move the seat, like that, and move the seat near the door, and so on. And in the advanced level, so beginner level, we can give them some instruction. We can use some instruction to make them perform in class. And at the advanced level, you can give commands, and it should be quite complex. For example, you went to bed if you went to bed before 10 o'clock last night, ask the person or your left a question about your yesterday's routine or something, yesterday's um, incident or something, how he or she went to a restaurant to have some food, like that. So like in that way, a teacher play a different role in the at the beginning of a few commands for them to understand, and at the advanced level, to give them to ask them some complex question to come up with their own answers, with their own presentation, with their own interpretations. Here, the learner's role is the learner is placed in the position of a child learning its first language. So you're just making learner as if he or she is learning their first language and responding to orders. First, you make them responding to the command, and learner first initially responds, and then try to integrate and move on to construct their own commands from the dominant from the dominant role. So there is a message in the inbox. Is it peer learning? Does it it's effective? Peer learning is effective. So for their peers, and initiating language usage there. So it really helps learners to initiate the use of language, the dominant discourse. So the role of language here is language is used to evince physical response in the target audience side, or on the principle that this way the memory traces, they try to memorize something, and then they try to present that in class. In that way, you avoid that peer learning happens, and then they try to learn through the commands. They try to construct their own ideas from the dominant discourse, and continually reinforced. The approach is one which is well suited to attitude of a person. Any society depend on his or her dominant discourse. Of course, it depends on the dominant discourse. Now the next method I would like to suggest. So Now, so far we have seen the silent way. So I'm just suggesting these are the ways in which we can play a role, and we can bring in the dominant discourse, and we can use that as a classroom discourse too, as oral and written. So so first one, silent way. The second one, total physical response. And third one, community language learning. Community language learning. Here, the teacher's role. The teacher takes on the role of a counselor, or someone who knows the language, whose responsibility is to help learners perceive their strength, their weaknesses, and the needs for the target language. So the target language may be first or second language. First language, even in first language, we use it in a different context, and as a dialect. And then when we use it in a classroom for return purpose, so we use it in a different way. So it's a teacher's responsibility to make them understand that, make them use the language in a proper way. In essence, the role is one of understanders, informers, and sympathetic listeners. So the approach was originally intended for monolingual groups. So it's important that the teacher counselor is fluent. So as a teacher, we should be fluent, and we should know what is happening around us and what we are doing, and we have to have total control over our learners. So you are responsible for everything, and you play a role of a counselor here as a teacher. And you have to use a language, learners' language, and as well as the target language. So here next, the learner's role is a client. So you are a counselor, and learners should act like a client. You should make your learners as your client. So the client are not expected to speak until ready to do so. So when you should allow them to speak, and at the same time respond, unless he or she feels comfortable and prepared to present themselves. So this method is it won't allow the classroom, your learners, to come up with their own ideas. They'll be attentive, and they'll just listen to you. And sometimes when you are strict, that would really affect. That would really stops learners to come up with their own ideas. So learners are also given a good deal of autonomy here in terms of what they want to learn, and the syllabus emerges from their needs. So here, when you use this community language learning, you play a role of teacher, play a role of a counselor, and learners play a role of a client. And this way, it has its own advantages and disadvantages too. But as a counselor, you should give autonomy to your learners to come up with their ideas, but you should make them to perform in class, to participate in class in that target language. So finally, the final one is dogma. Dogma is speaking in class. You should make your learners to speak in class. We have a group, and Scott Thornbury is a really good stalwart on this, and he conducts courses on dogma. And I was one of the participants. I had an opportunity to participate that in of that offered by international International Teacher Development Society. And at this juncture, we do discuss a lot as a group how to use this dogma in English language teaching. So dogma is nothing, and it is communicative. It is full, if not, it is communicative. You have to make your learners to speak in class. Absence of published materials. There are no materials, there are no published material, printed materials at all. A dogma approach is the best approach to make learners to learn a language and speak, to make them speak in the language. Approach, it abjures the use of publish materials, and the importation of technology. So a dogma lesson may have no materials at all, with all language coming from the participants, or use materials imported by the learners, and occasionally the teacher here in our classrooms, in Indian classrooms mainly, the teacher plays a major role, pivotal role, and it would be a monologue, and they share their resources. Whereas in dogma method, we bring in we bring in we bring in lot of ideas, and then we plan, and then we do follow procedure, and we make our learners to present effectively in class. So here, how are you going to planning? It's So the general outlines of a lesson can be planned, because learning is mm, seen to happen in conversation, and the focus is on what emerges naturally from the learners, rather than being imposed upon them. So here, it's a natural way to learn a language. So there are some procedures to be followed. Procedures are, by definition, are flexible, and so the teacher's role vary from equal listener and participant to short periods of more recognizable teaching focused on language issues, so that have emerged from the conversation. Lessons may start from an idea or a question from the individual. So pre-reading activity would be a floating an idea, or floating a question, asking a question, posing a question to your learners. With teacher or without teacher, peer learning can happen at the outset, before the learners that have become accustomed to the approach. Ideas maybe it come from the teacher, and thereafter they should derive from the learners, because that will maintain relevance and involvement. So it involves all of them in the classroom. So dogma is the best method. So all these four I just suggested to the teachers here to practice in your classroom. Already we do practice in classroom, and we are not aware of the planning, the procedure, and what are all the role they play, whether the dominant discourse play a major role, or classroom discourse play a major role, or additional discourse play a major role. So these are all the things. Now we understood what it is and how to bring out the best from our learners. End of the day, as teachers, it's our role, it is our responsibility to bring out the best of our learners in the classroom. So with this, I would like to wind up, and I just explain to you what it is and how we could do that. And before I wind up, I would like to show a TED talk to you that would really help you to understand that. I'll try that. If you could listen to the audio, you just say yes, or otherwise we'll just go ahead for the question answer session. Just give me 2 minutes, sir, to play the TED talk.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, no problem. Please take it.
Yes, sir.
I started teaching undergraduate English courses in the University of Puerto Rico, Aguadilla campus, about 20 odd years ago. And I quickly became frustrated. I love my job, but I was frustrated with myself, and I was frustrated with my students. And it wasn't anything my students were doing wrong. On paper, they were learning English. I would give them tests, and they know everything about pronouns, adjectives, syntax, grammar, you name it. They knew it, and they could prove it by passing the tests in writing. However, when I try to have a conversation with my students, when I try to have just a casual conversation, I would get this deer in the headlights look like. And then they would go into this what I call Porky Pig syndrome. They would go, itake, 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 and it just wasn't working. And I was frustrated because I said, I can't do this. These young men and women, when they graduate, they're going to go into a work environment in which they're expected to think at higher levels of cognition. They're expected to analyze, to synthesize, to evaluate, and they have to do it.
Not audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on with the question answer session. Let's move on to the question answer.
I think you can replay that once again.
Okay, I'll try it.
Okay. Ma'am, your mic is mute.
Yeah. Let's move on to the question answer session. Meanwhile, I'll try to present.
Okay. Do you have any question, please?
I saw one question in the inbox, a message inbox.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Swati.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. This was a very enriching session. Actually, as you were mentioning that, okay, we should provide lots of opportunities to our learner to speak, to communicate. But as you know that in India, we are having the overcrowded class. Okay, in a single class, we are having at least 40, 50 students. So in that situation, it is very difficult to us to provide opportunity to speak and to discuss over any topic, because some of the students, they are very dominant in the classroom and they take part. But the others they left behind. So what we can do in that situation?
Yeah, Swati, it's a good question, Swati. It's our setup, and we talk about our classrooms, Indian classrooms. In Indian classroom, this community language learning method would really help. You can, if it's a 70 in a classroom, or more than 50 in a classroom, you can go around and motivate your learners to participate. In that way, that would really help. Even silent way would help. As a silent teacher, you can go around and motivate all learners to participate in class. Our syllabus completion is there. At the same time, we can allocate 10 minutes time or 15 minutes time to make our learners to participate. In that way, we can bring in the dominant discourse, within our learners to bring in class. And we have to plan. As teachers, it's our responsibility to plan well. For that, these webinars like this would really help us to practice and to test that in our real classroom. And we are just these webinars are a blessing in disguise for us. This period, this blended learning period, helped us to reach out to all levels, and from Chennai I reached you all to share my ideas. So as teachers, it's our responsibility to share different ideas in classroom, to share different methods in classroom, to bring in the best out of our learners. It's our responsibility.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am.
Explore along these things, and you bring in the dominant discourse in your class.
Yeah, actually, ma'am, I am also teaching in Central University of South Bihar, and there the student strength is 60 plus, 62 in a classroom. BSc,
Yeah,
BSc.
even in our classroom,
Course.
we have 70 students,
Yeah.
but we make it interactive, we make it very interesting,
Yeah.
by using all these methods, the
Yeah.
silent frame and
One
all
more.
those.
Yeah, ma'am. One more thing, I think that it is a benefit of this blended mode that now we can take some kind of presentation because we can devote more time.
Yeah,
Earlier, we
that's
were
right.
focusing more over the written examination, paper pencil test.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right.
think that because due to pandemic, we switched to this mode of teaching, but it's
Yes.
good, I think.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah,
much, ma'am.
yes.
And
Thank you.
if you can do one more help for me, that for dogme we need more
Yes, ma'am.
explanatory. So
Yeah,
if you can share
Dogma
something.
it's emerging, and Scott Thornbury, he's been sharing everything, and we have a page too. You can explore on that. We can, if time permits, later on they can plan something exclusively on Dogma,
Yeah.
and we can discuss on Dogma.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all the participants for your for being present here. And first, it's the time to conclude. So at first, it's a Ramakrishna Mission, and we are the faculty member of Ramakrishna Mission. So we dedicate all our work to the Holy Trio, that is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa Ji, Ma Sarda, and Vivekananda Ji. So I sincerely pay my vote of thanks to them first. Next, I will pay my full tribute to my principal Maharaj, Swami Nirisananda Ji, who is very supportive, and obviously he encouraged me a lot. Then I will so pay my tribute to my senior colleague, Dr. Sanjay Mitra, and other colleagues who have supported me for this webinar. Next, I am sincerely indebted to the speakers who have done justice with the topic, and for me it was a new topic because Santosh Mahapatra, Dr. Santosh Mahapatra has already talked about the use of mother tongue, and later about minority language, and ma'am has talked how it can be implemented in the classroom, and obviously by using various methods and methods. So thank you, ma'am. You have done really justice with that topic, and it's the first time interaction with you. So thank you, ma'am. And it was really wonderful. And obviously, thank you, ma'am. And obviously, thank you to all the participants who have been engaged in the session, and this session was really interactive to all. And at last, I will pay my sincere tribute from my heart, and I will shower my blessing to my beloved student, that is Pradeep Sir, who has been constantly supporting me for this seminar, and he is behind the camera, and I am really indebted to him for this. And thanks to all of you, and kindly your certificate will be given within 15 days. So I hope after 15 days, if you are not getting, then you can contact me, and in the meantime, just fill the feedback form. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.